Good morning. Today is Saturday, November 21st. My name is Ann Stern, and today we're going to be taking a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 8. So, in this letter from Paul to the Corinthians, he had some questions from the Corinthian people, and they wanted to know, is it okay for us to eat meat that has been sacrificed to idols? So during this chapter, Paul explains if it is okay or if it is not okay. So he begins by saying, in and of itself, the meat, is okay. So the people had said, okay, Paul, is this okay? Because now you've told us that there's only one God, and He is the only God, but so these idols here are just pieces of clay or pieces of wood. They're just statues. They don't mean anything. And Paul said, innately, yes, that is very true. You are understanding this correctly. Those gods are basically nothing. And so the meat that is sacrificed to those gods, there's really nothing wrong with it. And, you could eat it without really, any problems or anything. But he said, we need to think about this a little differently. So he said, there are new believers out there, and they once believed in these gods. And so to them, if they eat this meat, it would cause them to feel guilty. And he said, we don't want a new young believer because of something that we are doing, even though what we are doing is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But if that would cause a new believer to stumble or to do something that they inside of themselves really believe is wrong, that could cause them to question their faith. So Paul, as he works through this, is saying, innately, there's nothing wrong by doing this, but we as adult believers have to make sure that those things that we do not cause those new believers to stumble. So we need to think about this in terms of our present day. Obviously, we don't have food that is being sacrificed to idols. But if there is something else that we do that could be perceived by a new believer as us doing something which is wrong, we want to make sure that we don't do something as mature believers that would cause those new believers to stumble. So I encourage you to read chapter 8. It is very interesting to hear about it. One of the things that I read about when I was researching this chapter was apparently the meat from these idols was taken to the marketplace and it was sold in the market, and people would hold weddings at these temples where these false gods were. So it was really quite an incorporated part of their lives. And if they weren't taking part in this, it was something that really excluded them from the society in that time. So I found it very interesting. And while he said, there's nothing innately wrong with doing it, it may cause someone who is a new believer to question their faith because they had been worshiping these other gods. Okay. Thank you for joining me today, and have a great Saturday. Take care.